In case you don't realize, when I say well-meaning, I'm being sarcastic. I haven't thought about this happening in years. I was 13 or 14 at the time. I'm 26 now. Let's start with a little bit of backstory. I was adopted by my paternal grandmother. She has a bit of an old-fashioned idea on how young people should meet or date, usually set up by parents or meeting at church. I call her mom as she had me my entire life. For what I'm about to describe, I don't blame her. She was bamboozled. Mom and I were close with a family that lived a short walk from us in the same apartment complex. In this family, living in their home were a grandmother, mother, and her 2 young sons that I sometimes babysat. We became close because Mom was a seamstress and she did some sewing for the mother. The boys took an instant liking to me and all of us hit it off. My mom and the grandmother were close in age, both Southern, and seemed to have similar viewpoints on things, such as aforementioned topics, so they spoke on the phone often. One day, when the mother and her sons are out, the mom and I are at home cooking and the grandma calls the house. She asked if I wouldn't mind coming over to cheer up her grandson. He was upset and rattled because his brother recently passed away. Mom asked all the questions you'd expect of a stereotypical old-fashioned matriarch. Will you, the grandma, be there the whole time? How long will you keep her there? How old is your grandson? Of course, all the answers were favorable, or else she would have flat out said no, but she was told that the grandma would be watching us, that I didn't have to stay long, and that this boy was only a couple of years older than me. Mom said I should go. It would be nice of me to do something kind for a person with a broken heart. I agreed because we recently had a death in the family. I wanted to help. I said I would go. While the grandma was still on the phone, she said, "Who knows Lulu Loopy? I may have just set you up with a nice boyfriend." On the other end of the phone, the grandma said, "I hope so." The distance between our apartments. Mom could watch me walk all the way to their place. She stood in the door watching. The grandma stood in her door also watching. I went there, and after the 2 of them waved to one another, the grandma closed the door behind me, closed the blinds, and fluffed my hair. I always had messy bangs, and she seemed determined to fix them. My mom always did the same whenever my hair got messy. I assumed it was one of their old lady things, thinking that a girl should always be tidy, so I didn't think anything of it. In these apartments, we had furnished basements. In ours, it had been turned to a play area and office, and in theirs, a TV or video game room. She took me down the stairs. I assumed this teenage boy was playing video games. Imagine my surprise when this boy turned out to be a man who looked like he could have been the same age as my dad. My dad was about 34 at this point in my life. Kind of froze, not sure what to say or think. The grandma introduced us. She kept trying to draw his attention to me. "Isn't she pretty? Look at all of her freckles. She's got pretty eyes." She pulled me onto the couch and made me sit down. She said that she had some phone calls to make, so she was leaving us there. The grandma ascended the stairs and closed the door, and I was scared she may have locked it. I realized she lied to my mom. She wasn't going to watch us, nor was this guy only a few years older than me. Once she was gone, he became agitated, wringing his hands, pacing, and speaking in garbled phrases. He was sweating when he looked at me. I tried not to panic. I wanted to run, but was thinking that girls who run in horror movies all die, so I sat still and let him pace. He sat on the couch and started rocking. I tried talking to him, but it didn't take me long to realize he had some sort of developmental disability. I realized he wasn't dangerous, just very uncomfortable with the female stranger, and it was probably likely he didn't realize my age. I turned a music station on the TV, and he calmed down and began singing along. Eventually, he fell asleep on the opposite end of the couch. Maybe an hour or so later, the grandma came to check on us. I smiled and said, "Thanks for having me, but I have chores to do. I should get back home to my mom." The grandma agreed after telling me to come back and visit her grandson sometime again, walked me to the door. I walked back to our apartment and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. Mom was startled. They usually called before I left their house. She looked at me and asked if the boy and I got along. "That was not a boy," I blurted instantly. She asked what happened, and I said, "He's old enough to be one of your biological kids." I have never seen such a look in her eyes. I'm sure she would have murdered that woman if she could have. She sat me down and made me relay everything to her. She asked repeatedly if he touched me and even looked over for what I suspect is evidence of sexual assault, even asking to smell my breath. She asked one final time if I was sure he didn't touch me and if I wanted to go to the doctor or police. I said no. I don't think that young man had anything to do with it. From his reaction, I don't even think he knew she invited me over. Mom gave me a big bowl of ice cream and stayed close to me for the rest of the evening, as if she were afraid I was going to be taken away from her. The next morning, I heard her on the phone yelling. I guess she called the grandma and gave her an earful. I don't know what she said, but I never saw anybody in that family again. I don't know if Mom was making sure we avoided them or if they were trying to avoid us. I suspect it's the latter. My mom is very scary when angry. So, Grandma, who put your friend's daughter in a situation where she could have been abused, let's not meet again. For your sake, my mom might end you. I have this thing that I do. It's simply called drinking way too much tea. Like to the point where I actually have a whole cupboard stuffed with jars filled with loose leaf tea, and I have at least 3 boxes of tea bags kept in my room for when I don't want to get up and make a new pot all the time. It's gotten to the point that when I go into a local tea shop, the staff greet me and ask if I like more of their black blood orange tea or perhaps their green dragon mix, which I tend to buy often. Even the staff at the local supermarket recognize me by now because I always buy the same boxes of tea bags. This became a problem about a year ago. They hired a new guy at the local tea shop. Let's call him Tom. He seemed like a nice guy, very enthusiastic about things, and seemed to fit in well with the staff. He was helpful, and he got familiar with their stock really fast. He actually introduced me to some of their own tea, a mix they called Sea Breeze. I didn't think twice about talking to him, because I talked to everybody else in that shop, and I've been going there for years. Not to mention that it was the only town around for miles that even had a tea shop of its own. Besides, Tom was really nice. After about 2 months, he asked me out though. It came sort of out of the blue, especially considering that we didn't know each other. I told him I wasn't interested in that and that I'd recently come out of a pretty bad breakup and just didn't want to date anyone for a while. He seemed to take it fine. Just said, yeah, I get that, and dropped it. At least I thought he dropped it. Maybe a week after that, I came to the supermarket to get some more tea bags. I didn't pay much attention to anything. I just dropped it by the cashiers and grabbed my wallet. When I was about to take my card out to pay, I suddenly heard a very familiar voice laugh and say, "Hey you, Lady Grey, right? You love that blend." Tom was sitting there dressed in the uniform of the staff. I got a little thrown off, seeing as how the supermarket hardly ever hired anyone new. Believe me, I'd asked many times while looking for a job. "Didn't know you worked there," I told him, and he smiled at me. "Yeah, I got a job here just the other day. Apparently one of their staff up and quit, so they need someone. And, well, I have a friend of a friend." I didn't ask more about it. This went on for a while, seeing Tom at both the tea shop and the supermarket. When it came to the latter, though, I always seemed to arrive just as his shift was almost up, and he would ask if he could walk with me for a bit. I always told him that it wasn't a good idea because I had quite a long way home and he normally got around by car. Whenever he would ask this, I always got a weird feeling. You know when there's this one person who you feel pretty indifferent about, but whenever they ask something like this, you feel like you have to make an excuse to get away? That's it. For all that, it was fine to talk to Tom. Something made me think I shouldn't walk anywhere with him though. I lied when I said I had a long way to go. Truth be told, I live maybe 10 minutes from the supermarket, but it's a little out of the way in a secluded area of the town where few people live. Lots of abandoned houses, and the apartment building where I live is pretty much the epitome of there's no one there to help, or rather, nobody who would even care to help. Besides being a pretty small girl, around 1.58 centimeters, albeit one who works out and has a good deal of muscle, I wasn't really comfortable with the thought of being in a secluded place with anybody bigger than me. Little by little, I could tell that Tom was getting frustrated about me saying no all the time. He'd get this pinched look on his face, and he'd use a very flat voice when saying, "Yeah, that's fine." When I come to the tea shop, he'd ask his boss if he could have a short break just so he could chat with me for a bit. When this had been going on for a while, his boss at the tea shop once took me aside when he wasn't at work and asked for a word. She started asking me if Tom was a bother to me and if he'd been doing anything untoward, so to say. I admitted that he made me uncomfortable when he asked to be alone with me. "You are the only customer he does this with," she told me. "He seems really indifferent to anyone else. I mean, yeah, he helps them, but he doesn't get so enthusiastic about them." This started setting off proper warning bells in my head, and I asked her if perhaps I could know when he actually worked so I could come in when he wasn't there. I wasn't about to stop going there just because of him. She agreed and gave me a schedule, even her own phone number so I could call her if something was up. Let me tell you, Tom got really irritated when he didn't see me at the tea shop anymore. If I went to the supermarket, he would be pushy about asking me where I was and why I wasn't there. You go like every week, he'd say. How come I never see you? I pulled some BS story about my routine needing a change and how my work hours didn't work with the old one anymore, and I could tell he didn't believe me. So about another month went by. He kept asking why he didn't see me more often and why I wouldn't take a walk with him. Then one morning, I got a letter in the mail. Just the wording alone told me it was him, though the content itself was pretty obvious. You are such a liar. Your routine needed a change. Your work hours didn't fit. You always lied to me. You work from home and you told me that. You work from home and you go get tea whenever. I saw you, you know. I was in my car outside the tea shop and you showed up when I wasn't working. Why are you avoiding me? Aren't I nice to you? I thought girls liked that when guys are actually nice to them. Guess you're just another little bitch who wants bad boys or whatever. Okay, that was out of line. Still, can't you just come in as you used to? I just want to talk, and why not walk a little bit with me? I can always just walk back to my car, you know? Maybe I could give you a ride home. Not like I don't know where you live anyway. I like talking to you. You pay attention and you listen. Just give me a chance, yeah? You can't still be hung up on your ex. It's been ages. If you're going to move on from an asshole, move on with a nice guy. I would like to say that I freaked out and made a fuss, but I didn't. I just picked up the phone, called the owner of the tea shop, and explained about Tom in the letter. The owner stated that he had stopped coming into work lately altogether and that she was going to fire him at any rate. This was just the nail in the coffin. She promised that she was going to talk to him about it and tell him that he was lucky I hadn't called the police yet. Well, she did, and it didn't stop. I kept getting letters. When I saw him at the supermarket, he would be agitated, and he would try harder than before to get me to walk with him. Once it even got to the point where he grabbed my arm and tried to convince me to just come with him to let him show me something. Luckily, at that point, there were security guards around, and they went over to us and asked me if there was a problem. I only had to look at Tom to make him let go. I think he knew that if he kept going or tried to claim that we knew each other well, I would tell them. Then came that last night when I'd been to the supermarket pretty late. I'd been wrapped up in work for a few days and hadn't had time to go to the shop, so I ran down to the supermarket to pick up food and other necessities that I was missing. And Tom was there, not working, but just waiting for me when I came out with heavy bags in my arms. He didn't approach. I just passed him by, hoping to convey that I was in a hurry, and headed out. I'd gotten maybe halfway home when I looked over my shoulder and saw his car stop just around the corner. Convinced now that he was following me and hoping to catch me alone, I decided to take a shortcut home. There's a path that cuts through the forested area around where I live, and it's a very narrow one. Difficult to walk along with shopping bags, but at least it would let me get out of sight for a bit. I hurried around the next corner, listening for the sound of the car as it started up again, and dodged into the forest. I crouched down behind a bush for a while, and I heard the car drive up and down the road several times. I'll admit that I felt triumphant that such a small feint could throw him off. He apparently didn't know where I went. The path is pretty hard to see if you don't know where it is, so perhaps he was unaware of its existence as well. After a bit, I got up and hurried along. Getting home wasn't very difficult at all, and I thought it was over and done with. But when I got inside and went up the stairs, I looked out through one of the windows in the stairwell. His car was just coming up the road towards my house. I ran as best as I could up the stairs and hurried into my flat and slammed the door. Now I was truly freaked out. It was easy enough to deal with it before. Letters could be shredded or burnt, and the shops were always manned with staff for security. But this was entirely different. Now he was at my house. I had locked the door behind me, and while I was unpacking the groceries, I heard the handle being turned and the door being pulled at. I didn't react much. The lock was new and the door was sturdy, so nobody could get in unless I opened the door for them. There was just one problem: the mail slot. I heard it squeak as it was pushed open, and I heard his voice. "What are you running from? It's just me." I didn't answer. I stood still in the kitchen and listened. There were continuous scratching noises coming from the door now, and he kept talking, telling me that he wasn't going to do anything bad, that he just wanted to see me. The longer I just stood there and did nothing, the more aggressive he got. It sounded like he was trying to kick the door down, all the while shouting about how I was a bitch, how unfair I was being to him, and how I got him fired. The last one, yeah, fair enough. The rest, not so much. Then the noise just abruptly stopped. I thought for a moment that maybe a neighbor had gone out into the stairwell to tell him to shut the heck up and leave. I waited a while longer, just standing there and listening intently, until I finally managed to relax and move again. I moved towards the hallway, hoping that I was moving really quietly to go to my little office. I was right in front of the door when the mail slot squeaked open again and a hand dropped something in through it. It was a burning cloth, and I could smell the stench of gasoline. I began screaming and ran to fetch water to put the fire out, and as I did, I heard Tom laughing outside my door. "I knew you were in there." Though I managed to put the fire out, he wasn't leaving. Called the police, but they told me that there was no patrol available to help. The fastest they could get to me was in 2 hours. I was stuck there in my flat with this creep outside my door, shouting threats and abuse at me for 2 hours. All this while none of my neighbors came to help. When the police did arrive, they arrested Tom. Apparently, there had been several more calls from my neighbors. The reason they didn't come to help was that they were worried that he was armed somehow. And well, can't blame them. I was later told that the police did find a machete in Tom's car, as well as 3 cans of gasoline and a lot of matches. He could have gone at any point to fetch any of these. But there's more. It turns out that the only reason Tom was ever hired by anyone was that he used a fake name. Technically, he didn't exist, hence why no one ever found anything criminal about him. But the police found him in their database eventually. He had done this in another town to another girl. She wasn't quite so lucky. He'd been to jail for what he'd done to her, but gotten out early on good behavior. I don't know the full details of the other incident, but I know that she lived though. When she was found, she was so badly burnt that she was unrecognizable. So this was about 5 months ago. I don't remember it with complete clarity, and I'm not the best at storytelling events from my life, but bear with me. I'll do my best. This was about 2 a.m. in downtown Denver. A friend of ours hosts a D&D session every Sunday. I and my partner normally stay the night, but we had plans the next Monday and had to go early. We said our goodbyes to everybody, grab our bags, and head out. It wasn't a long walk at all to the car, not even a block away. I and my SO started walking and chatting about the session. Then we both got silent at the same time. Somebody was behind us. I don't know how, but we both knew he was going to be bad news. He continued to follow us to the parking garage, and right before we entered, he spoke up with, "Are you ladies 18 or older?" Now, I'm a bigger girl, 5'10", and more than know how to hold my own against creeps. This guy struck me as different. He was a good foot taller than me, a blonde, blue-eyed male with one heck of a disgusting smile. Me being the dumb, polite person I am, I said something like, yes, why? And he proceeded to start saying things. "Well, do you pay your taxes?" With a quick response of, "Sorry, we aren't really at that stage of our lives yet." He quickly responds with a long rant about how taxes are terrible and you should never pay them. "They're using our taxes to kill people all the time," he said. "The government is killing people. Everyone is killing people, and they get away with it too easily." At this point, he begins to move closer and closer. My partner is backing up into the garage, and my dumbass is too scared to move, just trying to keep him focused on me rather than her. She gets within a few inches of my face. I try to casually step back, keep my movements looking natural, and straighten my back out, compensating for the fact that this person is larger than me. His breath was horrid. You could smell the alcohol with every single word that came out of his mouth, and his blue wristband was still on. I don't know if that's a bar thing. All I know is he had one. He continues on with his rant. My SO tries to argue back a bit. He starts to move away from me towards her. After a few glances between me and her, we catch on that we need to just go with whatever this guy says. When she stops arguing, his rant goes from taxes to political figures and genocide. You know, I could kill anyone I want and get away with it. Anyone can. The government is watching, but they don't care. They'll never know. His words were not making sense at all. "We are killing this planet, and it could be solved if we had less of a population," he said. Mind you, this guy was staying as close as possible. If either of us went out on our phones or our watches, he'd shift to them. Not to compliment him, but he was really perceptive for somebody I assume was drunk out of their mind. The conversation continues for about 5, maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. I feel disgusted with myself for it, but I'm agreeing with everything he's saying. At one point, he seemed to completely forget about my SO. I introduced myself using my character name and shake his hand, which allowed me to see a bunch of track marks on his arm. I'm freaking out on the inside, thinking I'm going to get stabbed today. I've never even been in a fight. How the heck do I handle this? All the while smiling and agreeing. Then his behavior shifts. Still staying way too close to me, he starts scratching himself all over, reaching into his left pocket over and over every time he says kill or references. Honestly, at this point, I was more mad than scared and started trying to work around him as stepping back was just leading me to a wall. It wasn't working no matter how hard I tried to walk or where I tried to go. He was always right there in my face, talking about killing anyone he wanted and saying that it would solve the world's problems if people just went out and killed hundreds of others. I got fed up with it, stepped to my right, then quickly to his left, and backed up straight out the garage. He followed, so did my partner behind him. We were finally out in the open again. I sent so many desperate looks to people walking by as he kept getting more and more pushy and ever closer to me. So much so that he was almost chest to chest with me. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed my SO's arm. Missed it by a long shot, she said. What? I mustered the best smile. I possibly could, and said, I just want to hold your hand. As a gay person with a few homophobic and crazy people encounters, this was my worst idea ever. She handed me her hand, though. I pulled her by me, and this man that seemed like a huge threat backed up so quickly, saying, "Oh, you two are together. Yeah, no, I'm cool with that. Have a great night." This boy, who had been doing whatever he was doing, turned tail because we were gay. The one time my sexuality has probably saved me rather than put me in danger. We waited until he was far up the straight, and then went straight to the car. The second we got in, we locked the doors and drove off. I was shaking the whole car ride home. We actually passed him later down the road. He and I made direct eye contact. A few days ago, I was sitting on the floor in the subway station, waiting for the next train and charging my phone on the wall outlet. I'd been there for maybe 15 minutes watching the trains go by and doodling on my phone. I look up from my phone to see an average-looking late teenage man staring at me with doe eyes. "You're beautiful," he says. "Gee, thanks," I mutter, unplugging my phone. He leans over. "Nice boots you got there. May I take a closer look?" The guy doesn't seem threatening, and the platform is filling with people, so I don't feel like I'm in danger. Maybe he's interested in shoes. "Sure, take a look," I almost say, but he's already kneeling and touching the material. He looks at me all excited. "Is this real leather?" "No, it's synthetic. They're from a discount chain, so probably not." He looks slightly disappointed and straightens himself. "Well, are you in the market to buy new boots anytime soon?" He says in a monotone voice. "Nope, I already have one pair. But it's good to have a collection." "What?" "I can't really afford to buy another, to be honest," I say, standing up. A lady standing next to me is looking at me, but when I mouth help, she looks away and blushes. "I didn't mean right now. I mean down the line," the man says. He rummages through his backpack and pulls out a crumpled women's fashion catalog for sellers. He turns to a dog-eared page that lists various styles of women's boots. "Would you ever consider wearing something like these?" "Those aren't really my style," I say. "What the heck, is this guy a sales rep or something?" "Oh." He puts away the catalog. I look at his shoes, which are black orthopedic shoes that only a mom could buy. "What's your style?" I ask jokingly. Maybe he'll talk about himself and I can sneak out of this conversation. "Nope." "I like when women wear these kind of boots," he said. "They look seductive in them." "Nope, not a sales rep, just a fetishist." "Awesome." The man pulls out his phone, he goes to his photos and starts scrolling through them. "Lots of famous women wear these boots," he says. "Do you know who this is?" He shows me a paparazzi picture of Lindsay Lohan. He continues to scroll through pictures of female celebrities, all wearing thigh-high ruched boots. "You won't know who this woman is, but this is JoJo." "Oh, I know JoJo. She sang Too Little Too Late, right?" I ask. The man looks at me funny. "I don't know what she does, but she wears the boots. That's all that matters," he said. He scrolls to a picture of Katy Perry. "I bet you know who this is." He zooms in on her boots, then zooms out and slowly zooms in on her boobs. "Yeah, everyone loves Katy Perry," he said. "Wow, you're really into boots," I comment. "Well, it was nice to meet you." "Randy." He extends his hand out for a dead fish handshake. "And you are?" Insert fake name here. "Great. Let's ride the subway together." "Heck no." "Oh, wait," I say. "Is this the southbound platform?" Randy informs me it's the northbound platform. "Oh, dang, I'm on the wrong one. Better go get to the other side. Bye." I step backward and wave at him as people are rushing into the train, but when the doors close, Randy is still there. "It's okay, I'll take the next one." What's your age? No, playtime's over. I don't want to tell you how old I am, Randy. I don't know you. I don't even know how old you are. I'm 26, he said. You don't have to be ashamed of being really old. I don't mind with being older women, or younger. Even if you're 17, it's okay. At this point in my head, I'm just thinking, someone please help me. Wait a second. Specialized, obsessive interest. Oversharing his private information. No sense of personal boundaries or social graces. This can only mean one thing. The poor guy, I think. Maybe he doesn't know that what he's doing is socially unacceptable. This can be a learning moment. Well, I'll tell him. You know, Randy, many women don't like to be asked these types of questions by strangers on the subway. Oh yeah. I know you're not dangerous, but I think I know what your intentions are, and I don't like when men talk to me with sexual intentions. Randy looked like a deer in the headlights. I know that, he said sheepishly. People tell me that when I meet ladies, but I figured I should try. Sorry, try to do what? Try to tell me about your freaking foot fetish and expect me to help you fulfill your desires? Try to get me to have sex with you? No. Screw you. Nobody who approaches any stranger gets to do that. But I held my tongue. It was brave of you to try. I say with gritted teeth. But Randy, I don't appreciate being asked these questions. Oh, okay. He said. I'm going to go over to the southbound platform now, and you're going to stay here and get on the next train, alright? Yeah, okay, I guess. He mumbled and shuffled his feet. Goodbye, Randy. He perked up suddenly. Okay, it was nice to meet you, he chirped. Maybe we will run into each other someday. Fat chance, asshole. I'm thinking. I run up the escalator, but instead of going to the southbound platform, I head down the tunnel to the westbound and eastbound trains, all the while fuming that I have to further detour my trip home just so I can get away from him. Lack of social cues can be damned. He knew he was being creepy and decided to keep doing it anyway, so he's a creep. So that's why when I looked over my shoulder and saw Randy running up the escalator after me, I booked it down the tunnel and ran to the first westbound train. I got off at the next stop and hid behind some trash cans for 15 minutes, before deciding it was finally safe. Guess I can't wear my favorite boots anymore. When I was around 7 years old, my parents would take me to a local grocery store and always ignore my complaints about how boring the trip was. Since there was nothing that caught my eye during these trips, I would always sit in those grocery carts and play with toys I brought from home, while my parents went to different aisles to gather all the groceries they needed. Obviously, it was not a smart idea to leave your 7-year-old alone in a grocery cart in the first place, but I was a very obedient child, and that part of town had a very peaceful and friendly atmosphere to it. Having my parents out of sight made me anxious at first, but I slowly grew accustomed to it once I realized that they would always come back to the cart after a few minutes. I just had to wait patiently. One day, my parents left me on the cart and didn't come back for quite a while. Now this would usually be the time when I would call, or, I guess in my case, loudly proclaim how hungry I am, for my parents to come back. But my parents bought me a Game Boy Advance a few days back, so I was too engrossed in whatever I was playing to even realize how many minutes passed. While I was waiting for my parents, a woman who I'd never seen before seemed to notice that I was left alone for a while and decided to approach the cart. She lightly tapped my shoulder to get my attention away from my game, which jolted me out of my trance. When I looked up at the woman, her face immediately formed into a huge grin, but I could tell it wasn't genuine. She began to ask random questions and tried to keep a conversation, but I refused to speak. I was a very shy child and always hated talking to adults who were not my parents. What's your name, sweetie? Silence. Aren't you bored sitting on that cart all alone? More silence. Where are your parents? Crickets. I've never felt like I was in danger while the lady was talking my ear off, because there have been many times when my friends of parents who live around the area would spot the cart I was in, wait with me, and also try to make small talk with me, which never really worked out, until one of my parents got back, which would lead to another very boring hour or so in the middle of the grocery store. Anyways, the woman eventually gave up making small talk and began to push the cart and said, "Why don't we look for your parents together?" Again, I didn't say anything since I assumed they were one of the million friends that my mother or father had. We were near the market doors until I noticed my father inside an aisle carrying a bunch of items. I called out to him and said something along the lines of, "Dad, your friend wants to see you." When my dad looked up to where I was, his face paled when he saw the situation I was in and just dropped everything he had in his arms and tried to rush over to the cart shouting my name. The woman at this point began freaking out and began to push the cart even faster. We were just out of the store and about halfway into the parking lot when she realized she couldn't outrun my dad if she kept on pushing the cart. In a complete panic, she let go of the cart and jumped into a car with a male driver before speeding off. It was obvious that she didn't give a shit about my safety. Now here I was at 7 years old in a shopping cart, screaming bloody murder as it rolled onto the street. I'm guessing there was a dent or something on the road because the cart then fell onto its side, which gave me massive scrapes and bruises to the left side of my body. Seconds later, I heard my dad swearing and quickly picking me up off the road, cradling me into his arms as I continued walking. Cops were called and my dad gave a statement. Unfortunately, he couldn't get the license plate of the car because he saw me fall onto the street and ran full force towards me, not even realizing the woman escaped with her companion. I had to get a few minor stitches and had a limp for a few days, but other than that, I was okay. Needless to say, my parents never took me on their boring grocery trips ever again. This story took place last night at a bar outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. In the defense of my quote-unquote male masculinity, I do want to make it known that I had consumed a couple of drinks the night this all went down. I'd met up with a couple of friends while at the bar and ended up heading out at about midnight with 4 of my female friends and 1 of my male friends. A couple walked out shortly behind us and stayed with us most of the way through the parking lot. We had just made it to our vehicle when we heard the 2 ladies behind us scream from across the parking lot. I instinctively turned to see what was going on, only to see 3 males surrounding the 2, attempting to grab hold of the lot. I said something along the lines of, "Screw that," looked to my pal and infamously said, "We are going." A little insight. My buddy and I work overseas security contracting, not the Blackwater stuff or super duper top secret operations, mostly celebrities, high profile weddings, and the occasional auction. Neither of us are small guys. Both of us are pretty close to 6'1" and about 200 pounds. So we rush over the parking lot, making a whole lot of noise and screaming profanities, mainly trying to get Bubba and his 2 cousins to concentrate on us instead. My buddy had a whole lot less to drink than me, I won't lie. He did some work. A couple of physical exchanges between the 5 of us and the 3 boys were running off. The ladies were horrified but okay. We ended up calling our girlfriends an Uber and following the couple home. Bubba and his cousins followed us for a bit. Thankfully, a phone call to dispatch ended their pursuit and saw them arrested for DUI and assault. I just woke up and wanted to share this. Not as some heroic story or some BS like that, but as a reminder to take care of each other. We are not truly human if we do not. This list received a whole lot more attention than I expected. I do truly hope that this story will encourage others to stand up for your fellow women or woman. Thank you for all the support. Oh yeah, and the gentleman dubbed Bubba ended up having 3 prior charges against women. He's likely going away for a long time. Hi, I joined Reddit specifically to get this off my chest. It happened this time last year, and to this day every time I think about it, it gives me chills. So I want to start off by saying I still work for this company and I still have anxiety every time I go into work. The company is huge, one of the biggest names in the world. For privacy purposes, I'm going to call it the Big Cheese or Big C. I also want to mention that I have crippling social anxiety, which I credit to being homeschooled most of my life, and this will make more sense later. Well, in September of last year, I was fresh out of high school and looking for work. I needed this job immediately because I was living with my SO and we were barely getting by. My father and my grandfather, they both either work or worked for this company for a long period of time, and is something that garnered a lot of respect in the family. So of course, I was thrilled when I got my first interview. It went great and I was all set to start training, which involved a few classes and on-the-job training. The classes were awkward to say the least, but nonetheless informative. Well, after the classes, we had our first task: join a group of fellow trainees and tour the work environment. This is when I first met creepy coworker. He was in the very back of my group, seemed a little shy, and didn't really talk to the rest of the group unless he was trying to make an awkward joke to join in. At first, I kind of felt bad for him. He seemed harmless, but definitely awkward and out of the loop. Knowing as much as I did going into the company, I made the effort to inform him and keep him updated with what the trainers were asking of us. He just seemed so lost and confused. I thought I was doing a good thing by helping him out. Even my SO thought so at the time. The training went by without any hiccups, and soon we were given the location of where we would start out. Ironically enough, the only person that I'd gotten to know, creepy coworker, had the same area I did. Realizing that we would start out together and both didn't know anyone, we decided to exchange phone numbers. This was so that we could both meet up the next week, starting day so we couldn't get lost. I thought nothing of this when he asked for my number and just assumed it was more because he was nervous and didn't know anyone beside me. Boy, did I live to regret that. The first day of training, we met up at a basically flagpole so that we could wait for our on-the-job trainer, Christy. When he got off the employee shuttle, he started texting me asking where I was. I was in the smoking section a little ways away, killing my fears with a cigarette. I texted back telling him where I was, and he asked if he could join. I didn't like how nervous I felt, so I wasn't very comfortable with anybody joining me during this time of reprieve. But I saw him coming over anyway, so I scooted over to make some room on the bench. That didn't matter because apparently he was going to sit as close to me as possible anyway. I hate touch, or people being in my personal bubble. Being a victim of other trauma, touch was something only people very close to me had permission to do. The creepy coworker then proceeded to ask me if he could bum a cigarette, and I'm not good at saying no, so I gave him one. After he lit up, he handed me my lighter, that I didn't even notice he took from the top of my bag, back to me. Again, I kind of just ignored the unwarranted invasion of my space. We talked since we had about 30 minutes to kill, like normal stuff, like how do you feel about the company, or where do you want to end up in it? I noticed he was wearing tattoo covering sleeves, and so I asked him about his tattoos. He pulled down the sleeves and started going almost each and every one, all something to do with either a love interest or something geeky. I listened out of mild curiosity, but quickly got uncomfortable when he started pulling out his phone to show me pictures of ones he drew. I was uncomfortable because he kept showing me pictures of himself as well, mostly photos of him shirtless, and I didn't really find that appropriate. He mentioned he was a Marine and that he had gained too much weight after his last tour. I apologized out of sympathy, but suggested that it was nothing to be ashamed of. Unfortunately, after that, he kept smiling at me in a way I deemed to be admiration. I had seen this look from my fiancé, so I knew somewhere I effed up. I quickly turned the conversation to more appropriate stuff like music taste. He seemed interested in what music I liked a little bit too much and decided he should make me a playlist. I said it wasn't really necessary, but he insisted. Later that very day during training, he kept purposely doing kind things, like taking heavy boxes from my hands or taking the odd jobs he deemed too grueling for a lady. I was a little bit annoyed, but mostly just glad most of the jobs meant that he'd have to go to a different area and give me some space. He'd always find a way back to appear beside me and scare me. I hate being scared, and he laughed it off every time. I was more than uncomfortable at this point, and a nervousness had settled in the pit of my stomach. At the end of the night, after we'd been sent to go home and come back the next day, he decided to walk me out. We would walk back through the maze my workplace actually is, all the way to the employee costume center and lockers. It was there that we had gotten our work costumes and stored our regular clothes in lockers. Well, I was having trouble remembering the combination, and I couldn't find the little slip of paper that told me it. The creepy coworker came up and smiled at me, seemingly waiting for me to finish up. I thought he left by this point, so I wasn't expecting him to be there. After a few tries, he reached over and put in the combination of my lock for me. This was a serious red flag for me. He had already memorized my combination, and now I felt as though my privacy was completely gone. Again, I'm awkward and unsure what to do in any situation like this, so I thanked him, but suggested that he let me figure it out next time. I was hoping he would so that he would forget my combination. Remember this for later. After changing back into my regular clothes in the girls' locker room, I came out and he was still waiting there. I asked him why he had waited when he could have just gotten home sooner, to which he replied, "Because I'm a gentleman and a lady should be walked to her car so she can be kept safe." I told him my SO was waiting to pick me up. He asked where, and I told him down the street like an idiot. I still don't know why I complied with this creep as much as I did, but I'd never been in a situation like this one. He told me that was too far for me to walk alone and that it wasn't safe, so he offered to drive me over to my SO's car. Due to how tired I was and how much I ached from the day, I just didn't have the strength to argue. I mean, he was creepy but nice. I chalked up the creepiness to him just being awkward. So without anything else weird happening, he took me to my SO, whom I had been texting the entire time, just to let him know where I was and what was going on. I had a deep gut feeling that I should text him everything I knew about the guy, so I did. When we pulled up, I immediately got out of the car. My boyfriend sat there leaning against the car with his arms crossed. He wasn't very happy about him giving me a ride, but nonetheless, he thanked the creepy coworker for getting me over to him safely. The coworker nodded, seeming to smile at my boyfriend the whole time. This was when my boyfriend first got a bad feeling about him. So we got home and my boyfriend warned me about the guy, telling me he wasn't getting a good vibe from the creepy coworker. It wasn't even 3 minutes after that I got a text from him. He started sending me songs and memes and telling me things like, "I feel like you really get me." Now I was deeply concerned. What the heck did I get myself into? Why did I have to be so damn nice to people? The following day at work, I was on the last day of training and I had a massive panic attack. I have a chronic illness, and the situation ended with none of my managers listening to me when I told them that the pain doesn't last and comes and goes. They proceeded to rush me to the emergency room. A stretcher carried me through work while I was crying and trying to hide my face. The customers were quick to take out their phones and film the whole thing. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, but what happens next is even worse. I received about 20 texts from creepy coworker asking me how I was. At this point, I was done. I just didn't respond. After a few random memes, he started texting me that he was drunk and thinking about not going home to his wife. This was the first time he'd ever mentioned to me he even had a wife. I was dumbfounded. Why was he so concerned about me when he had somebody he obviously loved enough to marry? I didn't respond. I went to bed. In the morning, I woke up to my boyfriend looking at my phone in anger. My heart sank, and I could only imagine what creepy coworker had sent now. My boyfriend showed me the only text I had gotten since the night before. It was from his wife texting me from his phone. She wrote me a message explaining that creepy coworker had a problem getting attached to women. She warned me that I should stay away from him and then told me her name. My name. It was after she had explained my name was a thing for him, all of his exes had the same name. Now at this point, my boyfriend was telling me not to go back to this job, that it isn't worth it. But that's not me. I wasn't going to let one creep ruin this opportunity for me. This job meant the world to me and I never wanted to let it go, so I told him if this continues, I'll go to HR. But in all honesty, I didn't even want to do that. I was the new girl. I didn't want the first month on the job to me be fighting a harassment case. Biting my nails the whole way I went to work. Suddenly, creepy coworker wasn't hovering anymore. I thought this might have been him being embarrassed. I was pretty convinced I wasn't going to have a problem after that. On my lunch break, he made sure to go on his lunch early and come find me. His normally enthusiastic attitude was gone, replaced by what felt like anger. I was scared. He came up to me and let me know that his wife was full of shit and just angry because he was divorcing her. At this point, I didn't want anything to do with him, so I kept quiet, hoping he would take the hint. Nope. He told me he had a gift for me and that he'd give it to me after that shift, quickly walking away before I could respond. After my shift, I go outside the work area to the lockers. I had waited an extra hour and a half, even taking a closing position from a coworker just so he'd go home before me. Well, my lock wasn't locked all the way and I was now freaked out. I opened the locker to grab my bag and go, but noticed it. A rolled up piece of drawing paper. I know what kind it was because I myself am an artist. Unrolling it was a naked girl. Suddenly, he walks up even though he should be long gone by then and confronts me. He asked me if I liked it, and because he seemed angry I said yes. I suggested he not do it anymore though, as my boyfriend wouldn't like this kind of gift at all. He rolled his eyes and playfully giggled at me like I was joking with him. But I wasn't. Not only did he follow me the whole way out of the work grounds, but he also got on the employee shuttle that I got on to have witnesses. He sat right next to me, leaning on me. I felt like a deer in headlights, mentally begging somebody to suggest that he shouldn't be that close to me. Nobody paid any attention. Instead, I spent the whole drive trying to get this man to pull his arm off of my shoulders. I felt nauseated and my head was spinning. After we got off, I practically dashed off the bus and ran to my boyfriend, who parked the car at the entrance to the employee parking zone. I got in the car and told him to go. He took off and I started crying. I told my boyfriend and he was pissed. He wanted to turn around and punch creepy coworker, but I talked him out of it through tears. I promised that I would talk to my managers after that. Well, I kept looking for the right time to pull a manager aside, but never got a chance the next night I went in. Now, creepy coworker's attitude did another 180, and he was being extremely weirdly playful. Then he crossed the final line. He grabbed my butt where customers could easily see him. My coworkers kind of laughed and thought it was a game. Because this time I was pissed and pushed to my limit, I went after him. I legitimately punched him in the ass and shouted in his face. "How do you like that? Huh?" Seething, he seemed unfazed by my anger. Instead, he laughed it off and winked at me. I went down into the basement for the employee bathroom and quickly threw up the contents of my stomach, crying in the stall, also praying that this would stop. I quickly made an excuse, used my chronic illness, and went home. So fast forward a few weeks, he had completely swapped out his shifts, so he wouldn't work with me. I felt like I had won the battle. I sent a message and he realized he'd crossed boundaries, until the night before Christmas Eve. I had a terrible feeling as my boyfriend was driving me to work that night. I felt gross. I got to work and he was there, flirting with other girls, suddenly having this big ego I had never seen him display before. Like I said, when I met him, he was shy and awkward. It's like his personality flipped every time I had to see him. I never knew which side of him I was going to get. That night, he actually stomped off as all the other coworkers, including myself, closed the joint. We were scrubbing like normal and he didn't seem all together. So he clocked out early and I relaxed. I figured he had gotten in trouble since one of our 4 managers seemed to be upset that he clocked out without permission. I was there extra late. The evening festivities were done with for the night and my zone was pretty much closed off from customers. So I walked through the massive property that is my work to get to the street. I had started taking new ways to meet my boyfriend who picked me up, just so I wouldn't be followed. This time I was going to walk straight out of the grounds and onto the street where the bus stops were, and my boyfriend would be waiting at the curb. I was about halfway through my approximately 12-minute walk and I was in a dark area. Out of nowhere, as I'm sure you've already guessed, the creepy coworker shows up. He starts yelling my name and following me from behind. I pretended not to notice and walked faster. He yells my name again and seems angrier, so I sprint for it. I sprint all the way to cross the shuttle zone and end up crashing into someone's chest. Thankfully, it was actually my boyfriend who had a really bad feeling and wanted to be as close to my work exit as possible. I looked back and creepy coworker got on a shuttle, but was staring from the window, smiling like a Cheshire cat the whole time. Never in my life had I been so terrified. After that, the next night was Christmas Eve and I was supposed to work. But I just knew if I went in, something bad was going to happen to me. So crying the whole time because I knew I had earned a bunch of points for calling out to avoid him. I cried, asking the lady on the phone if I was going to get fired, and she said she honestly couldn't say. I respected that, but I knew I wasn't done. I wasn't going to let this creep make me lose the job I had worked so hard to get, even changing my appearance to fit their strict standards. No, so I wrote to the only person I could think of, my trainer Christy. She was a lead and she is the kindest girl you'd ever meet. Heart of gold. You just knew being her friend meant that you'd have a trusted confidant for life. I told her everything, sent her the screenshots of the text sent to me. Finally told somebody with an ounce of leadership that I was scared to go to work. Immediately, she responded and asked if she could tell the managers, and even though I was incredibly nervous, I told her yes. The next day, I was pulled in, and I'm thankful for my ex-manager, Christopher, because he was shocked at everything that had happened to me and quickly helped me write a report for HR. He led me through the steps and even changed the schedule so I wouldn't work with creepy coworker unless he specifically traded shifts. 2 months go by. I am well acquainted with the responsibilities for my work at this point and I'm comfortable, but of course, there's no stopping a stalker. He had traded a shift and was working the night shift with me. He was angry every time he looked at me and I avoided him at all costs. Then around halfway through my shift, I'm down in the basement coming back from the restroom. I'm walking up the steps that lead back to my work area and then I feel somebody behind me. Before I could think a clear thought, I was pushed against the wall, hand beside my head. He leans in and said, "You should smile more." Then the bastard chuckles and walks away. I feel pretty hysterical at this point and run to the closest leader, crying and trying to explain what happened. It was at this point that my manager Christopher, pissed off that HR was taking so long to investigate my case, went to speed it up. Well, after 4 months of an interview process with HR, finally the case was resolved. Not only was he let go, but I was doing really well in my job finally. Nothing to worry me into not paying attention to my duties. Creepy coworker has left me alone ever since, but sometimes I get random friend requests from guys with no pictures and always similar names, always close to his. So, please leave me alone or you won't like the results. I won't be intimidated ever again by you, and I will win every battle you throw at me. Let's not meet ever again. In the fall of 2010, I decided to go back to college. I was a single mom of 3 boys, but they were all in school now, and me going back was finally possible. The school I went to is a regional campus of a very large university and is located in a neighborhood that is known for crime, meth, heroin, prostitution, etc. But it was only a 20-minute drive from my home and I didn't feel unsafe about going there. The first day and first class were intimidating. I didn't know anybody and I was a lot older than most students. I was 28 at the time. I sat down in the back of the room at a table, and a few minutes later, a lady who was around my age sat down next to me. She was very skinny, smelled like cigarettes, had greasy hair and sunken eyes, but she started to talk to me and seemed normal enough. She started off the conversation telling me that she chose to sit next to me because I was wearing the prettiest blouse in the room. Strange, but as an awkward person, I leave a lot of leeway for people to say or do awkward things before I think too deeply into things. She didn't have a backpack, any books, a pen, or a notebook. Nothing. She said her financial aid hadn't come through yet, but she didn't want to fall behind on classes and asked if she could share my book. I agreed and gave her a pen and paper also. After the first class, she asked if I would mind going to the library with her so she could scan some of the pages to take me home. I agreed and we started to head to the library. She stops and looks at her phone and says her son just texted and needs her to come home to do something. She asks if I will come with her. I tell her I have another class shortly and I can't. Then I ask if she still wants to go to the library first. She says no, that she has to get her son but really can't go alone. I keep telling her I can't go with her and she starts crying. At this point, we were in a common area outside and the parking lot was to one side and the library to the other. I tell her I need to go to the library and she's welcome to come, talk or whatever she needs, but I have to go. I didn't like being outside away from people with this woman anymore and I was trying to get back to a busier area. She gets really upset, starts screaming, and basically says F you to me. She may have actually said that. I can't remember how the interaction went exactly because I was frozen in confusion by how quickly she transitioned from friendly to crying and scared and to now screaming in my face a slew of hateful, angry things. I turn around to start walking to the library and call my friends so that I would have somebody aware if this lady tried anything more than just screaming. I get to the library vestibule and watch her through the glass doors. She is standing in the parking lot, and then a car pulls up with a man in it and is obviously upset with the woman. They are arguing, but I can't hear them from inside the vestibule. Eventually, she gets in the car and leaves with him. The next day, I was dreading class because I didn't know what this woman's attitude would be that day. But she wasn't there the next day. In the end, she never came back to class. I didn't know her name or, at the time, how to look at a class roster. But looking back, I'm fairly certain she was not enrolled at the school at all, and for whatever reason, was trying to get me to leave with her. I wish I knew her intentions. At the same time, I'm glad I never had to find out. For 6 months last year, I lived in the north of Spain. About a week before I was going to move back to Ireland, my friends and I were at my house having dinner and drinking a little bit. I was renting an apartment in the city, and my roommate was an older lady, maybe in her 50s. I'm 20. That night, my roommate left to go have dinner with her friends. About a minute after she left, somebody buzzed our door to be let into the building. I looked at the camera and didn't recognize the woman. She looked to be in her late 20s to early 30s, so I just assumed it was one of my roommate's friends and she was coming to meet her or something like that. I buzzed her into the building, assuming they would meet in the lobby. At first, I didn't buzz her in because I didn't recognize her and she walked away from the door. But then I hit the buzzer as soon as she walked away, and then I myself walked away from the camera, meaning I couldn't see if she actually entered or not. Assuming that if she didn't enter, she would just call or text my roommate. Boy, was I wrong. This woman came up to my apartment building on the 6th floor. She came up just 2 minutes after my roommate left, so I know she didn't take the stairs, and I know they must have seen each other when my roommate got off the lift and the lady got in. Realizing that this is weird, I do not open the door when she rings it. I look through the peephole just to confirm that it was nobody I knew. At this point, I back away from the door and gesture for my friend to be silent. We creep back to my room, which is at the far side of the apartment, and I begin calling my roommate who wasn't picking up. Meanwhile, the lady is incessantly ringing my doorbell. My roommate is not picking up, and my friend is just telling me to open my door. In her mind, it's a woman, so she must be harmless. I tell her that she's an idiot for underestimating the female sex. Women can be criminals too. She keeps telling me to open the door and I refuse. The doorbell keeps ringing and I keep looking out the peephole. At this point, I understand that if she knew my roommate or were looking for somebody specific, she would just call or text them. But she didn't take out a phone at all. She just stayed eerily quiet, didn't call out any names or ask if anybody was home. This was weird to me. I finally get through to my roommate. She said that she wasn't expecting anybody and that she doesn't know anyone in that age range. Then she asks if I'm okay and I say I'm fine. Now it's been at least 20 minutes. I know the lady knows somebody is home because the lights are on and my understanding is that's why she's not leaving. I continue watching her through the peephole and see her go into the lift for a minute and then come back out again. The lift is really loud and I would have heard it move. It didn't. She just went in and came out. In my mind, this means somebody is in the lift waiting for her. That screams sketchy to me. After about 40 minutes, she leaves. I run to her hall and flick on the outside camera. The lady left the building with 2 men. They all had backpacks on. I will be eternally grateful for trusting my instincts and not listening to my friend. Sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry. This literally just happened. For context, I'm a tiny 4'10", 160-pound lady. I'm a mom and I personally have quite a few years of working with or interacting with unsavory characters who are sometimes violent. So to say, I actually work best under pressure. I also have had really bad social anxiety, so I'm always on high alert. So I roll up to Walmart, my husband's grandma watching the baby at home, because I need to grab some things for the baby. I get my car and go about my business with collecting of diapers, wipes, and a new pack of pacifiers, etc. After my serious shopping ends, I wander to the female aisle where hygiene products for ladies are kept. I see a very awkward looking gal looking at boxes of pads. She can't be much older than 10 and her sweats and tea give her away. I casually step over holding a box with fun designs on it. I say, "Here, try these. See this big word? It means you won't be allergic. No matter what, and that's kind of important." Her shy red face lightens up with a little smile and she says, "Thanks, miss," before darting off to tell a lady in nice clothes. I'm talking like a woman's suit dress nice. Important later. Near the shampoo that a nice lady over there helped me find some of the hyperallergenic ones. I waved at the curious mom who smiled and waved back. As the daughter and mom go off on their own, I notice a weirdly twitchy, ungroomed man following them. I think nothing of it as, who am I to judge relationships? Except if that was mom's boyfriend, this post wouldn't be here, would it? I'm getting ready to leave after looking for a toy for my son when I spot none other than the shy girl who has a scrunched up, angry, sad kid face. I'm about to speak when I fully round the corner and see Twitchy holding shy girl by the wrist, hard enough I can see the red mark forming from the other side of the aisle. I don't see mom and it hits me that this is not the mom's boyfriend, and shy girl is in danger. I dart over there and snatch her over to me, screaming in this dude's face. "Do you know this girl? What's her name? Where's her mom?" The problem is, Twitchy got answers. I'm drawing a small gathering of onlookers now, and Twitchy is visibly more twitchy. He says, "I'm her uncle, damn it. Now give her here," and he reached for her. I toss her behind me and, on full autopilot, ready to fight, scream even louder, describe what her mother is wearing then. He freezes and starts muttering. After regaining his confidence, he hollers back with blue jeans and a shirt just like every other normal person. The crowd seems satisfied and a few wander off thinking this is a mistake. But the girl is crying as this guy is physically touching my chest with his, trying to get to her. I yell at the top of my lungs, "You are a liar and a pedophile." He screams, "No, I'm her guardian." Then, just as it came from heaven, I heard a shaking, angry but calm mom's tone say, "The problem with that is I'm her mom and I've never met you before." Mom to the rescue. I shit you not, my mouth flew open watching this beige-clad businesswoman swoop in like a gallant angel to rescue her offspring. Her finger in his face, she backs him down like the savage animal mothers can be. I could hear the deranged mom snarl from 8 feet away, clasping tightly to a child sobbing in relief, thanking me and praising her mom. The woman berated this man verbally and security chased him out of the store. Sadly, he wasn't alone, so I was told and made an exit. I gave the mom my number when she came back to thank me and collect her daughter. If that woman had anything, through her tears, she tried to give it to me. I told her the truth. "I have a little boy, ma'am, and all I'd like to do is get home to him." She seemed to wholesomely understand. I didn't actually end up buying anything, and my cart is probably still chilling in the toy aisle. I'll send my husband later. Now I'm going to go home and hold my son for a while. Okay, so a little backstory first. I lived in Thailand from ages 13 to 17 as a missionary kid. My parents never really let me travel by myself unless it was necessary. We didn't have a car or anything, so I would use public transportation. Being a young blonde, white girl in Bangkok, Thailand, where sex trafficking is very prominent, I usually wasn't traveling by myself anyway. On this particular occasion, I was out at a mall with some friends and was going home. It was around dusk, so I was going to take a taxi. I've taken taxis before and haven't had any weird experiences until this time. When I get in, the guy is asking me questions like, "Where are you from?" or "What do your parents do?" They usually ask these questions, or sorts of things, because I speak the language a bit and they are cautious like anyone else would be. But this guy starts asking me very personal questions like, "How old are you? Do you have a boyfriend? Are your parents home?" I immediately started to get uncomfortable. I give him a false name and age and say that my parents were home. This is not where it stops. He continues to ask questions, now smiling creepily at me in the rearview mirror. I start to ignore him and just look out the window. After a minute of silence, he starts to hum. Not just humming to himself, but staring at me from the mirror. I wait a couple of minutes and have my phone in my hands ready to call somebody if he makes a different turn. I know most of the paths to my house, so I would know if he was taking the wrong one. I also start memorizing his taxi number, color, and what his face looked like. He eventually starts full-on singing to me a slow song that I could not understand. I finally call my parents and just say to stay on the phone with me. The guy realizes I'm on the phone and stops immediately and doesn't look at me for the rest of the trip. I told him to drop me off a block away from my house, just so he wouldn't know where I lived. I've never gotten out of the cab so fast. I realized he could have been harmless and not intending to be creepy with his singing to me, but it was weird and I wasn't going to take any chances. I've had one other creepy encounter with a taxi since that time, but that story is for another post. This happened when I was about 8. For reference, I'm female. I grew up in an apartment complex with about 20 buildings, each around 25 floors high. Each floor had 4 apartments, which made about 200 apartments in all. Each building had a car park underneath with an elevator and a flight of stairs that went from the car park to the roof. My apartment was on the 5th floor of an apartment building right in the middle of the complex. I used to take the bus home from school and it would drop me off at the corner across from the complex. I would cross the road and walk home. One day I'd gotten off the bus and crossed the road when I saw that some neighborhood kids had drawn a hopscotch on the footpath outside the complex. I loved hopscotch, so I dropped my bag and started playing. On my second go, a lady who looked like she was in her mid-20s came over and asked if she could play. I was naturally a shy little girl, but I was also very polite, especially to adults. I gave her my stone and let her have a go. Once she had a go, she asked if her friends could play. 3 guys, all in their mid to late 20s, came over. This freaked me out. As I said, I was very shy, especially of men. I was aware that I was alone with them and I felt uncomfortable. I told the lady that they could play, but I had to go home. She gave me a sad look and said that she hoped we would be good friends. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I was pretty scared, so I lied and told her I would take my school bag home and come back. I picked up my bag and hightailed it out of there. I got home and thought that would be the end of it. I was scared of getting in trouble from my parents for talking to strangers, so I didn't tell them. The next day, the lady was waiting for me at the gates to the complex. She said that she was very sad that I didn't come back and that it hurt her feelings. I said I was sorry, but that my mom had made me do my homework. She asked if we could play now. I looked around and saw her friends waiting by a van. She said they wanted to take me to have ice cream at Kiki's, which was a new ice cream place that had just opened. Each ice cream came with a toy, and all my friends at school had at least 2 toys each. We couldn't afford to go there, so I'd always felt left out. Now this lady was offering to take me. I knew I shouldn't go with her, so I said thank you, but I couldn't play today. She got really angry and said I had to go with her. Being a timid kid, I hated being yelled at, so this freaked me right out and I started to cry. The lady immediately said she was sorry and gave me a hug. Then she tried to lead me to the van, saying an ice cream to make it all better. I pulled away and started to run home. This time they followed me. I could hear them running after me and I knew they were faster than me, so I figured I'd hide from them. I flew into the underground car park of the building closest to the gate and hid between the 2 cars. I heard them run down the ramp and stop. Then I heard the lady call out to me. "Do you like hide and seek? Let's play. Ready? We're coming to get you." I was shivering violently and knew that they would find me here. I decided I'd get to the elevator shaft, take the elevator up to the top, then run down the stairs a few floors and take it back down, thinking they would see the elevator stop on the top floor and assume I was hiding there, so they would search while I got away. The elevator was on the other side of the car park. I had to go around 2 corners to get there. I crept along the wall, staying as low as I could, until I was around the corner, and then I bolted for the elevator. The elevator was in a small room that had a huge door. I got inside but didn't close the door all the way. I pressed the button and watched as the elevator slowly descended, stopping at nearly every floor. I crept over to the door and peeked out through the crack to see where they were. I spotted them just as I heard the elevator being from behind me. Without thinking, I closed the door. Now, as I said before, the door was huge, so it made a huge noise as it closed, and even as I ran into the elevator, I knew they would know where I was. The elevator was full of people, and I squeezed right to the back, hiding behind 2 boys and a girl who I'd seen around before. The girl lived in my building, but on a different floor. I watched the elevator doors closing, praying that they would hurry up. Just before they closed, a hand shot between them and they opened again. The woman was there, looking furious. "Get out here," she yelled. An elderly woman asked what the matter was, and the woman said I was her daughter and I'd run away. I was too scared to speak as the woman grabbed my arm and tried to drag me out. One of the boys sensed something was wrong and stopped her. He asked if I knew her, and I shook my head and started to cry. The girl from my building picked me up while the boy told the woman to leave me alone. Since the elevator was full of people who now realized what was happening, the woman and guys disappeared. The girl from my building and the 2 guys walked me home and told my parents what had happened. The police were called, and after some investigating, I wasn't told this until years later, found that the woman and the men were child traffickers. I'm so grateful that the boy realized something was off and stepped in. Who knows where I would be if he hadn't. This is going to be short, but the memory sprung into my mind a couple days back, and I thought it would be worth sharing. I live in North Wales, UK. For anybody who has had the pleasure of visiting, it is truly a beautiful place to live. Though, for an adolescent boy, it is certainly lacking in things to do. As a result, my friends and I would often find ourselves mindlessly exploring areas of countryside and coastline. Despite it being quite sparsely populated in comparison to the closest cities, there is a dual carriageway running right along the coast from Wales into England. Also, train tracks run alongside this road for most of its course, occasionally passing overhead via a small cement bridge. Anyway, there was one night a few years ago when about 4 of us randomly decided to try and explore the inside of one of these bridges, as one of the group had observed a manhole cover nearby, which we believed to be the entrance. On closer inspection, we discovered that several tools would be required in order to gain entry. We returned with the necessary equipment and proceeded to unbolt the cover. This had to be done stealthily, as the train track was right beside us, not close enough to be of any danger, but definitely a sufficiently small distance to cause panic for any train driver, and panic usually means police. It wasn't long before we had removed the heavy steel disc and had started descending the ladder down to the structure. Once we had all safely reached the bottom, we decided to progress to the other side. At this point, we are totally confined to the narrow space that leads into the main area. If you are confused as to what the heck this bridge is supposed to be, you probably should be, because it was rather peculiar. I mean, I would have never known there was even an inside had we not found the manhole. So, as we squeeze and crouch and at one point scrape along our bellies to the other side of the structure, there is a growing sense of claustrophobia between us. The distance from one end to the other is surprisingly long, but by the halfway point, you can look down through the narrow gaps onto the motorway below. This was actually pretty cool, which helped keep us calm in a strange way. At this point, apart from the mild discomfort and confinement, we were still just a group of guys on an adventure. But that was about to change dramatically. Now, more than a few meters beyond halfway, which we could tell due to the symmetry of the passageways through the bridge, one of us claimed that they could see some object in the distance at the far end. Slightly hesitantly, we agreed to investigate. Bad move. I reached the end first, and let me tell you, I have never felt the same sense of dread before or since. In front of me was a single fold-away chair positioned facing a wall. On the wall was a partially torn page from a newspaper or a magazine, showing a fully naked lady in erotic position. The reason I don't just refer to it as porn is because something was different about it. I can't put my finger on it, but it seemed more sinister, if that makes any sense. More disturbingly, the eyes of the woman on display had been cut from the page, removed with precision, not just hastily ripped off. The scene that lay before us had rendered us completely speechless, and an overpowering sense of panic could be felt collectively. That was when we found the condom. The horrendous, gut-wrenching, blood-drenched condom. Needless to say, we got the heck out of there as fast as humanly possible, smashing our knees and chins against the sharp cement edges that lined the path to the ladder by which we had entered. Of course, we were all praying that the manhole hadn't been resealed, and it was impossible to tell until you reached the ladder itself. Thankfully, the exit route was clear, and we promptly dashed as far away as our legs could carry us. I'm sure this ending comes as a disappointment to some of you reading or listening to this, as we luckily never bumped into the twisted individual who sits in that chair, but I must stress how radically out of the norm it was given where I live. The reason I mentioned the population earlier was with purpose, because there are easily enough people here to escape the realms of crazy country folk, yet nowhere near enough people to have somebody clearly lose grip on society without somebody taking notice. For example, there was literally only one homeless man who everybody in the area knew and grew fond of, eventually resulting in a mass gathering at his funeral when he passed away. I sometimes think, though, not recently, as I had more or less forgotten about that night entirely, about the person who climbs down into that bridge and navigates through the darkness to sit facing a wall and do who knows what that ends up with a condom full of blood. You honestly couldn't envision a more surreal situation. It has come to my realization that what we unearthed that night has not once been uttered to another soul. As a naive teenager, it was the type of thing you just want to forget, but thinking about it, we probably should have let the police or at least somebody know what was down there, because it wasn't the doings of a healthy-minded individual. So there you have it. Apologies for the length. I got a little bit carried away, as it was my first post here, and I wanted to make the reading experience as similar to the reality as I could. Now I'm a few years older and hopefully a bit braver. I'm considering going down there again, accompanied of course, to see what messed up shit might be waiting. This could well happen in the next couple of days, and rest assured, I will 100% post an update, as I currently have no job, so time is plentiful. Thanks for listening. This is my first time posting here, but I have been following this subreddit for a while now. The year is 2003, I'm a 15-year-old boy and living in a small city. This is a place where everybody seems to know everyone. I am typically shy and often use the internet as a way to meet people. During this time, the instant messenger ICQ was still pretty popular amongst the teens in my area. I would often stay up late adding new people and chatting them up. I would do this by searching the city and adding people I knew from school. This is how I met her. Her name was Sarah. We began chatting innocently enough. The normal hey what's up sort of deal. Now, Sarah was a self-described 17-year-old girl. Short, brown hair and nerdy. We hit it off pretty fast. We had so much in common and I found it easy to open up. Although, I thought it was strange that I'd never seen her in school. I go to the Christian school, explaining why I never see her. We continue chatting for some time and I eventually give her my home phone number. We chat regularly over the phone until eventually she asked, "Would you like to hang out sometime?" Without hesitation, we make plans for me to go over to her house, hang out and watch movies. The day finally comes for us to hang out. I make my way across the town to the address she gave me. It's a small apartment building. Slightly confused on how she and the rest of her family would fit in such a small apartment, I make my way up the stairs. I knock and I am immediately greeted at the door by a woman, maybe in her late 20s or even early 30s. I knew this was Sarah, but she didn't look anything like she described. I was instantly weirded out, but followed her into her small one-bedroom apartment. I stupidly asked, "So, are your parents home?" She laughed. "No, it's just me here." I'm now awkwardly sitting on the couch. "Do you drink?" She's looking at me across the room. "Yeah, water," I joke. We both share an awkward laugh as she pours me a glass of wine. I never take a sip of it. She sits close to me after popping in a bootleg copy of Finding Nemo. "My brother got this for me while it was still in theaters. He's like a hacker or something." She laughs. At this point, she is very close to me and I'm uncomfortable, and being the weirdo I am, I shift to the floor. I'm now sitting on the floor with my back up against the couch. She then straddles me from behind. "You look so tense." She begins rubbing my back. "I'm really good at this. I can make you feel so good," she said. I lean forward. "Yeah, thanks, but you don't need to do that. I'm fine." I explain I should be going and she points to her bedroom. You can stay the night. I've never had a guy stay in my bed. She keeps making these advances, telling me how she hasn't done it in so long and she just wants to meet a nice guy like me. All the while she keeps touching my arms and face. Now at this point in my life, I was still a virgin, but this lady was not going to be the one to change that. I talked my way out of this situation and head home. The next few days, I get several messages telling me she misses me and she's sorry. Eventually, I cave and respond to one of her messages. I ask her why she lied and what her deal is. She tells me she has a hard time meeting friends and that she doesn't like people her own age. I feel bad for her, forgive her, and we make plans to talk in person. Here I am at my last encounter with Sarah. I ride my bike to her apartment. Once inside, I am greeted not only by her, but her parents too. They introduce themselves. Finally, we get to meet Sarah's boyfriend. Her dad jokes, "We've heard so much about you. She's always going on about how great you are." Her mom follows up. In my head, I'm freaking out. I am not this girl's boyfriend. Sarah grabs my hand and laces our fingers together. She looks so happy. Her parents were just stopping over to pick something up and were actually on their way out the door when I showed up. If I were going to get out of here, now would be the chance. I grabbed the box her mom was about to pick up. "I'll take that down for you," her mom smiles. "You're a keeper." I help her parents load the box in their SUV and hop on my bike. I was just swinging by to say hi. I should probably get home. Sarah wraps her arms around me and kisses my cheek. Ride home confused and plan on never talking to that girl again. She dropped me a few more messages I never responded to. Even called the landline a few times, but we never spoke. I don't know what ever happened to her. I don't know why her parents didn't question my age or if they were just okay with it. This story happened about 4 years ago, spanning from the end of my grade 10 year to halfway through my grade 11. I was in the band room of my school where my friends and I liked to hang out and eat our lunches since we were all friends with the band teacher. But one day there were a few new people there. One of them was Tim. Tim was in grade 12, I was in grade 10, and we hit it off immediately. It was like we were almost the same person. Interests, hobbies, activities, etc. I didn't see it at the time, but he was basing all of his likes off of mine. We exchanged information like Snapchat, Discord, a phone number, the whole lot, and we spent a lot of time talking. This is where things started to go downhill. I was talking to him, and at this point we had known each other for about a week and some change. He says to me that he's in the hospital and that he's really sorry. As soon as I saw this, I started crying. While he was in the hospital for the week and a half he was there, he kept trying to get me to come see him while using the classic, trying to manipulate me to come. I, however, could not want to go as the mental health recovery unit where I live has a strict family-only policy for the patient's safety. I explicitly told him that I could not see him, and he kept trying to manipulate me into doing so anyways. A few weeks later, just after school ended and Tim and I had been talking for a while, I got a message from this girl named Sarah in my Instagram DM saying things like, "How dare you flirt with my boyfriend?" or "Why did you come on to him when he has a girlfriend?" and things like that. I don't remember exactly as I wanted to block this whole period of time out. After a while of explaining and telling her I did not know he had a girlfriend, she explained to me that he'd done this thing before and to just stop talking to him. Also, he did the same thing to her. She's so far trapped in an abusive relationship she can't get out. His MO, per se, was preying on young naive girls for mental validation, all while making them feel horrible for not doing things for him. Before Sarah came to me, there were red flags and sirens going off in my head, but I chose to ignore them since I didn't and still don't like breaking things off with people without a good reason. When he invited me out, I'd make an excuse since my gut told me to run. But I didn't run, at least not before Sarah. After the explanation, I quickly started ghosting Tim. It was pretty simple since we didn't actually have any overlapping activities or hobbies, so all I had to do was block him on social media and block his number. Fast forward to the end of November of my grade 11 year, I've forgotten all about Tim and tried my hardest to push what he did out of my brain. Guess who pops up in the only social media DM I forgot to block him on, but Tim himself. And me being the trusting person I was, saw nothing wrong with it. Maybe he had changed. Maybe he was a different boy now. He told me he was off for Christmas break the week after and wondered if I wanted to go to a frat party with them. Now the flags are really rising and I say, sure, why not? Then text Sarah about what's happening. During this hiatus from Tim, Sarah and I built quite a close friendship. She says she didn't even know he was coming back and that he told her that he was going to Cancun with his family for the holiday season, leaving on December 5th, but she's away at her father's place for about 45 minutes out of town for the week of the party and to do as I see fit. I wanted to have fun, so I went to this party. I was easily the youngest person in the whole party. As I was only 16 at the time, I didn't feel comfortable drinking at a place other than my home, so I chose not to. Tim, however, does drink. Once he was drunk enough for his liking, we got up to go, and I know where I live pretty well. Not a big city, but not a small one either, and we went down a street I had never been down before. Again, red flags were going off, and I was tense and jumpy. There was nobody on the street and no lights on in the houses. Tim then plants himself in front of me and tries to kiss me. I, being 16, have never even kissed anyone before, didn't take well to this. Luckily at the time, my mom was making me take a lady self-defense course, so I punched him in the eye, kicked his groin, and booked it. Some people might say that this was an overreaction, but I had been sexually harassed before and didn't want to take my chances with a drunk guy, even when I knew. I bus it home from downtown, and when I get home, it's a little after 10:30 at night. I didn't tell my mom since I was scared she'd get mad at me for being at a party. I was irrational and in hindsight probably should have told her. I immediately text Sarah to tell her what happened, and she doesn't reply until the next morning. From what she said, he texted her all sweet-like, and she gave him the address of her dad's place, where she was staying while he was on a business trip. He got there still drunk and pissed off, hit her a few times, and verbally abused her until she had to leave and go to her mother's house. I tell Sarah that I'm sorry for what happened and hope it never happens again, but I cannot keep talking to her unless I want Tim in my life, which I don't. Back to today, and Sarah is still with Tim, and I see her around sometimes with a black eye one day or a swollen cheek the next. To this day, I have trust issues with guys, and it is extremely hard for me to form romantic relationships for fear that this will happen again. Before cutting off contact with Sarah, I did offer help, and she said that other friends did too, but she didn't want people tied up in her mess. I still say hi every once in a while, maybe once a year just to catch up, but that's it.